I used to believe that loyalty was a two-way street. I was wrong. 20 years. That's how long Rachel and I had been married, and if you'd asked me a month ago, I would have told you we'd make it another 20 without breaking a sweat. We were high school sweethearts, the kind of story people roll their eyes at until they see it actually work. I still remember the proposal like it was yesterday. Nothing fancy, just me on one knee in the park where we had our first kiss, holding a quarter-carat diamond that took 3 paychecks to afford. Rachel cried so hard she could barely say yes. Our wedding was the same. Small, intimate, just family and close friends in her parents' backyard. Her dad, Frank, pulled me aside that day and told me he couldn't have picked a better man for his daughter. Those words meant everything to a 22-year-old factory worker with calloused hands and big dreams. The early years were golden. I'd come home from a 12-hour shift at the plant, covered in grease and sweat, and Rachel would be there waiting with dinner warm in the oven. She'd trace the scars and calluses on my hands while we talked about our days, calling them honest hands, with this little smile that made every aching muscle worth it. Sunday dinners with both families became our tradition. Her mother Margaret's pot roast, my mom's apple pie, Frank telling the same construction site stories while we all pretended we hadn't heard them before. I never minded the double shifts, the overtime, the holiday work. Every extra dollar was an investment in our future. Rachel handled the finances. She was always better with numbers than me. She managed our social calendar too, keeping track of birthdays, anniversaries, organizing get-togethers. I trusted her completely. Why wouldn't I? This was Rachel. My Rachel. The changes started small, so small I didn't even notice at first. She began staying up later, always on her phone, scrolling through something with the screen tilted away from me. "Just Facebook," she'd say dismissively when I asked. "You know how these mom groups are, always some drama." She started suggesting I pick up more weekend shifts. "We need to build our nest egg," she'd say, kissing my cheek. "I want us to be secure." When Jim from next door mentioned he'd seen Rachel's car at the shopping center during my Tuesday shift, she had an easy explanation: picking up prescriptions for her mother. When Carol from down the street asked if Rachel enjoyed the new lunch place downtown, Rachel laughed and said Carol must have mistaken someone else for her. I believed every word. That was my job as a husband, wasn't it? To trust my wife? But 3 weeks ago, something shifted. I came home from a particularly brutal shift. One of the machines had broken down, and I'd spent 6 hours elbow deep in mechanical guts trying to fix it. My back screamed, my head pounded, and all I wanted was to collapse into bed beside my wife. Rachel was already asleep, or pretending to be. Her phone lay face down on the nightstand, and for the first time I could remember it was still glowing with notifications. Not the gentle pulse of a charging light, but the active glow of incoming messages. At 2 a.m. I lay there staring at that phone, feeling something cold and foreign twist in my stomach. 20 years of marriage, and I'd never once thought about looking at Rachel's phone. Never needed to. But lying there in the dark, listening to her breathing that seemed a little too controlled to be truly asleep, I felt the first crack in the foundation we'd built. I should have picked up that phone, but I still believed in us. That was my first mistake. 3 weeks passed after that sleepless night, and I became a detective in my own home. Every morning started the same. I'd reach for Rachel like I had for 20 years, and she'd already be out of bed, in the shower, or suddenly remembering something urgent in the kitchen. No more good morning kisses. No more waiting up when I worked late. When I tried to hold her hand while watching TV, she'd pull away to check her phone or adjust a pillow. "I'm just tired," she'd say evasively when I tried to initiate intimacy. "This headache won't go away. My stomach's been off. Mom's health issues are stressing me out." 20 years of marriage teaches you the rhythm of your partner's body, their desires, their patterns. This wasn't stress. This was avoidance. The phone became her constant companion. She'd take it to the bathroom every single time. She'd panic if she couldn't find it immediately, tearing through cushions with barely controlled anxiety until it was back in her hands. The password had changed, too. I discovered this by accident when I tried to check the weather on her phone while mine charged. "Privacy is important, even in marriage," she said sharply when I asked about it, her tone cutting. "Are you turning into one of those controlling husbands?" Her appearance began to change. New clothes appeared in the closet. A silk blouse here, a form-fitting dress there, things I never saw her buy. She started wearing makeup for grocery runs, styling her hair for errands. The perfume was what really caught my attention. For 20 years, Rachel wore the same vanilla scent I'd bought her for our first Christmas together. Now she smelled like something expensive and unfamiliar, something that made my throat tight with recognition I couldn't quite place. "It's a gift from Lisa," she explained when I mentioned it. "From that new boutique downtown. Don't you like it?" Lisa. Her friend Lisa, who was planning a wedding and apparently needed Rachel's help 3 times a week. Tuesday meetings, Thursday consultations, Saturday planning sessions. Rachel had never shown any interest in event planning before, but suddenly she was indispensable to Lisa's big day. The lie unraveled at a neighborhood barbecue. I was manning the grill with Tom, Lisa's fiancé, making small talk about the wedding. "Rachel's been such a huge help to Lisa," I said, flipping burgers. "All those planning meetings must be paying off." Tom's forehead creased. "Planning meetings? Man, we hired a professional planner months ago. Lisa hasn't needed help with any of that stuff." The burger nearly slipped off my spatula. "Oh, I must have misunderstood," I managed, my mind racing. "You know how women are with their projects." But I hadn't misunderstood. Rachel had looked me in the eye and lied over and over again. The distance between us in bed became an ocean. We'd lie there, inches apart but completely disconnected, the silence so loud it hurt my ears. When I tried to talk about us, about what was happening, she'd turn it around on me. "You're suffocating me, Daniel," she'd snap defensively. "When did you become so needy?" So suspicious. This isn't the man I married. Maybe she was right. The man she married would never have doubted her. But that man was dying, suffocated by lies I couldn't quite prove. The receipt changed everything. Rachel had asked me to grab ibuprofen from her purse, another headache, and there it was, crumpled between her wallet and makeup bag. Lucia's Italian Bistro, dated last Tuesday at 1 p.m., during my shift. During her meeting with Lisa, 2 entrees, a bottle of wine, $68 for a lunch she'd never mentioned. "It was a business lunch," she said quickly when I confronted her, snatching the receipt from my hand. "I'm trying to get design work from a new client." "Is that a crime? Do I need to report every movement to you now?" Rachel did occasional freelance graphic design, mostly logos for local businesses, nothing that involved wine lunches at upscale restaurants. Her clients were plumbers and lawn care services, people who met at Starbucks with budget constraints and specific requests. "Which client?" I asked. "You don't know them," she snapped irritably. "God, Daniel, what's happened to you?" "You're paranoid. Maybe you should talk to someone about these trust issues you're developing." That night, I made a decision that went against 20 years of instinct. I was done being the trusting fool. If Rachel wanted to lie to me, gaslighting me into questioning my own sanity, then I'd find the truth myself. Tomorrow, when she left for another meeting with Lisa, I'd follow her. I'd spent 20 years building a marriage on trust. Now I was about to spend the next few weeks tearing it down, piece by piece. I just didn't know how deep the betrayal went. The factory had taught me patience. When a machine breaks down, you don't just start hammering at it. You observe, document, diagnose. You follow the evidence systematically until you find the problem. That's how I approached Rachel's betrayal, like a mechanical failure that needed solving. I started with the odometer. Every morning before work, I'd photograph her car's mileage with my phone. When she claimed she was going to her mother's house, 12 miles round trip, but the odometer showed 35 miles driven. I documented it. When she said she was meeting Lisa at the coffee shop on 3rd Street, but added 42 miles to the car, I logged that too. The parking garage receipt came next, found wedged under her passenger seat while I was checking the tire pressure. Downtown Marriott, 3 hours of parking on a Wednesday afternoon when she was supposedly at her sister's house helping with the kids. Her sister lived in a suburban neighborhood with driveways, no parking garages for miles. I drove by Lisa's house during the next planning meeting. Rachel's blue Honda wasn't there. It wasn't at the coffee shop either, or the bridal boutique, or any of the places she claimed to frequent. But I found it eventually, parked outside an apartment complex called Riverside Gardens on the other side of town. I sat in my truck for 3 hours, watching, waiting, my hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. She emerged, looking refreshed, almost glowing, fixing her hair in the car mirror before driving away. I wanted to vomit. The credit card statements revealed more. She'd hidden them lately, but I knew her passwords. She'd been using variations of the same ones for years. A charge at Victoria's Secret 2 weeks ago, almost $200. I'd never seen any new lingerie. Restaurants I'd never heard of. Always 2 meals. Always during my work hours. Cash withdrawals that didn't match our usual spending patterns. The phone bill was damning in its absences. Hundreds of texts during specific windows, always when I was at work. But the messages themselves were deleted. She was careful, but not careful enough. The pattern was clear. Heavy texting from noon to 3 on weekdays, nothing on weekends when I was home. After a week of surveillance, I followed her again. This time, I watched her park at Riverside Gardens and use a key to enter apartment 237. A key. Not knocking, not ringing a doorbell. She had a key to another man's apartment. I sat in my truck, engine off, watching our 20-year marriage dissolve in real time. An elderly woman walking her dog passed by, and I realized I was crying. Not sobbing, just silent tears rolling down my face while I watched the apartment where my wife was destroying everything we'd built. "That's Nicholas's place," the elderly woman said conversationally, having doubled back. "Nice young man. Personal trainer at the gym. Always has lady visitors, though. Different one every few months. Personal trainer." Rachel didn't even have a gym membership, or so I'd thought. The rage that filled me was cold, calculating. Not the hot fury of immediate betrayal, but something deeper, more purposeful. I'd spent 20 years loving this woman, working myself to the bone to provide for her, trusting her with everything. And she'd thrown it away for what? Some gym rat with an apartment full of rotating women? I went home and pulled out our documents. The prenuptial agreement her parents had insisted on, ironically to protect Rachel from me if things went badly. But I'd had more assets going in. The house I'd inherited from my grandmother, my pension plan, my truck. The prenup protected me more than her, especially with an adultery clause that would forfeit her claims to marital assets. But a clean divorce felt insufficient. Rachel hadn't just cheated, she'd gaslit me, made me question my sanity, my worth as a husband. She'd been using our money, our savings, to fund this affair. Every receipt I'd found was paid from our joint account. She was stealing from our future to pay for her betrayal. The plan formed slowly, methodically. Rachel's greatest weakness had always been her parents' opinion. Frank and Margaret thought their daughter had the perfect marriage. They bragged about her at church, about how she'd found such a good, stable man in me. They'd been married 45 years themselves and saw their values reflected in our relationship. What if they discovered the truth? Not from me, not secondhand, but with their own eyes. I studied Nicholas's schedule by sitting in the parking lot at different times, noting his patterns. He worked mornings at the gym, had clients until 2 p.m., then was consistently home by 3. Rachel always arrived around 3:30, staying until 6. Sometimes 7ths were their most consistent day, every Thursday without fail. Next Thursday, that would be the day. I'd already heard Rachel mention possibly having another wedding planning session that day. I'd pretend to pick up an evening shift, ensuring she felt safe in her deception. Then I'd make a phone call that would destroy her world as thoroughly as she'd destroyed mine. I used to fix broken machines for a living. Now I was about to break something that could never be repaired. And unlike those machines, this was exactly what I wanted. Thursday morning arrived with a gray sky that matched my mood. My hands trembled as I buttoned my work shirt, each button feeling like a step closer to the edge of a cliff. Rachel hummed in the bathroom, actually hummed, while doing her makeup. She'd been in such good spirits all week, more affectionate than she'd been in months. The anticipation of her afternoon with Nicholas made her generous with her deception. "Have a good day, honey," she said cheerfully, kissing my cheek at the door. The kiss burned like acid. "Don't work too hard." "Might have to stay late tonight," I replied, the lie sliding out smoothly. "Johnson wants that main line recalibrated before the weekend." "That's fine," she responded casually. "I'll probably have dinner with Lisa anyway." Wedding stuff. She smiled, and I saw it clearly now. The practiced ease of her deception, the way the lie rolled off her tongue like truth. At work, I was useless. Dropped a wrench into the machinery, nearly crashed a forklift, forgot basic procedures I could do in my sleep. My supervisor, Mike, pulled me aside at lunch. "Dan, what's going on?" he asked with concern. "You look like hell." "Rachel's not feeling well," I answered. "Might be something serious. Can't stop worrying about her." Mike's face softened. "Take the afternoon, man." Family comes first. If only he knew. I clocked out at 2 p.m. and sat in my truck in the parking lot staring at my phone. Margaret's number glowed on the screen. One call would set everything in motion. Once I pressed that button, there was no going back. A text from Rachel appeared. "Having dinner with Lisa tonight. Don't wait up. Love you." The heart emoji decided it. I pressed call. "Daniel!" Margaret's warm voice filled my ear. "How lovely to hear from you." "Hi, Margaret. Listen, I'm really worried about Rachel," I said, my voice cracking, not acting, just the genuine emotion of the moment. "She called me about an hour ago saying she felt dizzy, nauseous, like she might faint. She was driving home but sounded really out of it." "Oh my goodness," she exclaimed. "Is she okay?" "I don't know," I continued desperately. "I'm stuck at work, big emergency with the machines, and I can't leave for at least 2 hours. I tried calling her back, but she's not answering. Could you and Frank check on her? I'm worried she might need the emergency room." "Of course," she replied immediately. "We'll leave right now." Oh, poor Rachel. She's been under so much stress lately. "Thanks, Margaret," I said gratefully. "I'll meet you there as soon as I can get away." "Probably around 5:30? "Don't worry, Daniel," she assured me. "We'll take care of her." I hung up and drove to Riverside Gardens, parking down the street with a clear view of the entrance. My watch read 3:15. Rachel would arrive soon, then Nicholas, then her parents around 5:30. I'd arrive moments later, playing the concerned husband who'd rushed from work. Nicholas's motorcycle pulled in at 3:20, so he'd left the gym early today. Special occasion, perhaps. Rachel's Honda arrived at 3:35, and she practically bounced out of the car, carrying a small gift bag. An anniversary of some kind? The thought made bile rise in my throat. I waited, watching the clock, my heart hammering against my ribs. This was really happening. 20 years of marriage ending in a carefully orchestrated revelation. At 5:15, I noticed Nicholas's motorcycle was still there in its spot. Good. They were both inside. My plan would work. At 5:28, Frank's blue sedan pulled into the complex. I could see Margaret in the passenger seat, her face creased with worry. I pulled in behind them, jogging over with what I hoped looked like desperate concern. "Daniel?" Margaret grabbed my arm urgently. "Any word from her?" "Nothing," I replied anxiously. "Her car's here, though." She must be inside. Frank studied the building. "Which apartment?" he asked. "She mentioned visiting a friend here once," I lied. "Maybe 237? I think that was it. We climbed the stairs together, Margaret chattering nervously about possible medical explanations. Low blood sugar, inner ear problems, maybe even pregnancy at her age. Each suggestion was a knife twist, knowing what we were about to find. The door to 237 was slightly ajar, soft music floating out. I'd made a copy of Rachel's key weeks ago, but we wouldn't need it. I pushed the door open wider and we stepped inside. Another text from Rachel buzzed my phone. "Lisa says hi." "Having such a good time. You're the best husband ever for understanding." I took a deep breath and opened the door fully. In 30 seconds, 3 lives were about to change forever. And only one of us knew it was coming. The scene that greeted us was worse than anything I'd imagined. Rachel and Nicholas weren't in bed. They were on the couch, intimately entwined, her silk blouse unbuttoned, his shirt on the floor. Wine glasses sat on the coffee table next to the gift bag I'd seen Rachel carry in. But the detail that burned itself into my memory, the thing that made everything irreversibly real, was Rachel's wedding ring sitting beside the wine glasses like a discarded prop. The sound Margaret made wasn't quite a gasp or a scream. It was something primal, the sound of a mother watching her child destroy themselves. Rachel's head snapped up, her eyes going wide as she processed the scene. Not just her husband, but her parents, all standing in the doorway of her secret world. "Mom?" The word came out as a squeak. Rachel scrambled to cover herself, her hands shaking so badly she couldn't manage the buttons. "This isn't... I can explain." Nicholas jumped up, grabbing for his shirt, his gym-sculpted muscles tense with panic. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 30s, with the kind of prettiness that belonged in a cologne ad. The kind of man who'd never worked an honest day in his life. Frank moved faster than any of us expected. 20 years of construction work had kept him strong, and his rage gave him speed. "You son of a b***," he roared, crossing the room in 3 strides and slamming Nicholas against the wall. "With a married woman?" "My daughter." I joined him, grabbing Nicholas's other arm, and together we pinned him. Up close, I could smell Rachel's perfume on him, see a lipstick mark on his neck. My vision went red at the edges. "Please," Nicholas begged, his pretty boy confidence evaporating. "She told me you were separated. She said the marriage was over." "Liar!" Rachel shrieked in response, but her voice cracked, betraying her. Frank's fist connected with Nicholas's jaw, not with full force, but enough to send him sliding down the wall. "Get out!" Frank growled menacingly. "Get out before I do something that'll land me in prison." Nicholas scrambled for his belongings, trying to maintain some dignity as he fled. "Rachel, tell them," he pleaded. "Go!" Frank bellowed, and Nicholas ran, leaving Rachel alone to face the wreckage. Margaret hadn't moved from the doorway. She stood perfectly still, tears streaming down her face, looking at Rachel like she was a stranger. When she finally walked forward, Rachel reached for her, seeking comfort. But Margaret's hand came up sharp and fast, slapping Rachel across the face, not violently, but with the precise disappointment only a mother could deliver. "How could you?" Margaret's voice was barely a whisper. "How could you do this to Daniel?" "To us? To yourself? We raised you better than this." Rachel collapsed onto the floor, sobbing hysterically, makeup running in black streams down her face. "It just happened," she wailed desperately. "I didn't mean for it to. Daniel's always at work, always tired. I felt so alone." "Alone?" I finally spoke, my voice deadly calm. "I worked those hours for us, for our future. Every double shift, every weekend, every holiday, it was all for us. And while I was breaking my back, you were here." Rachel crawled toward me on her knees, grabbing at my legs. "Please, Daniel, please. she begged frantically. I'll end it. I'll never see him again. We can go to counseling. I'll do anything. Anything you want. 20 years, Daniel. 20 years has to mean something. It meant everything to me, I said coldly, stepping back from her grasping hands. But apparently it meant so little to you that you could throw it away for… What? Some gym trainer who probably has a different woman here every week? Margaret knelt beside Rachel, but not to embrace her. She gripped her daughter's chin, forcing her to make eye contact. Your father and I have been married 45 years, she said sternly. 45 years, Rachel. We've had hard times, lean times, times when we could barely stand each other. But we never betrayed our vows. Never. It was a mistake, Rachel sobbed brokenly. Just a stupid mistake. How long? Frank asked, his voice rough with controlled fury. How long has this been going on? 2 months, Rachel whispered, then seeing our faces, amended. 6 months. 6 months of lies. 6 months of gaslighting me, making me feel paranoid and controlling. 6 months of using our savings to fund her affair. The prenup protects everything I brought into the marriage, I stated mechanically, my voice emotionless. The house, my pension, my truck, and the adultery clause means you forfeit any claim to marital assets. Rachel's sobs turned to wails. You can't! Daniel, please! She pleaded desperately. I'm filing Monday morning, I declared firmly. You'll need to find somewhere else to live by the end of the week. Frank stood, his face granite. We'll testify to what we saw, he said resolutely. Whatever Daniel needs for the divorce, he has our support. Margaret rose too, looking down at her daughter with profound disappointment. I don't know who you are anymore, Rachel, she said sadly. The daughter I raised wouldn't have done this. She wouldn't have destroyed a good man who loved her. Mom, please, Rachel begged. But Margaret was already walking toward the door. Frank paused beside me, his hand on my shoulder. Son, you deserved better, he said quietly. You always have. I looked down at Rachel one last time, this woman I'd loved for 20 years, who I'd built my entire life around. She looked small, pathetic, her carefully applied makeup smeared, her hair disheveled, the designer clothes she'd bought with our money wrinkled and stained with wine. This was who she really was beneath the lies. Your things will be in boxes on the lawn Tuesday morning, I said with finality. Don't try to come to the house before then. I walked out with her parents, leaving Rachel alone in the apartment she'd used to betray everything we'd built. Behind us, her sobs echoed down the hallway, but none of us turned back. I walked out of that apartment with her parents beside me, leaving Rachel with nothing but the ruins of her lies. But revenge, I was about to learn, is a meal best eaten cold, and it lasts longer than you expect. 6 months later, I sit on my porch with a beer, watching the sun set over the neighborhood. The house is quieter now, but it's a peaceful quiet, not the tense silence that marked the final months of my marriage. The divorce was swift and brutal. Rachel's parents' testimony, combined with the documentation I'd gathered and the prenuptial agreement, left her with almost nothing. She got her car, her personal belongings, and a small portion of our joint savings, barely enough for a security deposit on an apartment. Nicholas disappeared within a week of the confrontation. Apparently, dating married women lost its appeal when it came with angry fathers and divorce court subpoenas. Rachel tried to contact him, I heard, but he'd blocked her number and moved to another gym across town. She lives in a studio apartment now, working retail at the mall to make ends meet. I ran into her last month at the grocery store. She looked older, tired, wearing a polyester uniform instead of the designer clothes she'd loved. She tried to approach me, but I walked past without acknowledgement. There was nothing left to say. Margaret and Frank still invite me to Sunday dinners. It was awkward at first, but they made it clear. I was still family to them. Divorce papers be damned. Rachel hasn't been to a family gathering since that night in the apartment. Margaret told me she calls sometimes, crying, begging for forgiveness. But some betrayals cut too deep to heal. She made her choice, Frank said matter-of-factly over pot roast last Sunday. And it wasn't her family. The factory guys know what happened. Word spreads in a small town. They treat me with a mixture of sympathy and respect. Mike, my supervisor, told me I handled it like a man. Clean, decisive, no drama at work, he said approvingly. That takes character. I haven't dated yet. Maybe I will someday, when the thought of trusting someone doesn't make my chest tight with anxiety. For now, I'm rebuilding myself, piece by piece, the same methodical way I fix machines. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder if I went too far. If I should have confronted her privately, divorced quietly, let her keep her dignity. But then I remember the gaslighting, the way she made me question my sanity, the casual cruelty of her deception. She wanted to destroy our marriage in secret, in the shadows, while maintaining her facade of the perfect wife. Instead, I made sure the people who mattered most saw exactly who she really was. The sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky orange and purple. I take another sip of beer, feeling something I haven't felt in months. Peace. The foundation I built my life on may have crumbled, but I'm still standing. That's more than Rachel can say. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.